Behold, as the sovereign of tarmac and torment, Marquez slithers into the Andalusian amphitheater they call Jerez, not as a champion draped in laurels but as a wounded wolf whose flanks still drip with the evidence of recent catastrophe. And let it be known, the entirety of that paddock, every mechanic, every rival, every whisper-hurling journalist ought to shudder down to their very marrow. Permit me to unfurl a portrait in words most uncommon. A solitary figure guides his machine into the Circuito de Jerez, Angel Nayad, that cathedral of phantoms and past glories, and upon his right forearm resides an injury deliberately unveiled, unbandaged, uncamouflaged, an open, weeping, ugly proclamation for all the world to gawk at. For this individual no longer subscribes to the philosophy of concealment. No, sir. This is Marquez transmitting a telegram to the entire 2026 MotoGP congregation. Every Aprilia rider who gallivants about the track as if they've purchased the cosmos, every ink-stained obituarist typing eulogies ahead of schedule, every sofa-bound sage shrieking about deterioration, he is informing each and every one of them. Advance if you dare and conclude that which the asphalt initiated. You fancy yourselves knowledgeable about what transpired at COTA. Excellent. Then let us haul that incident out of the shadows and exsanguinate it completely. Let us rewind the spool of memory to turn 10, a crest that descends treacherously, during the opening practice session of the 2026 United States Grand Prix weekend, a mere quartet of laps into the proceedings. The reigning planetary sovereign lost command of his Desmos GP26's interior section while traveling at 190 km per hour, skidding relentlessly until he made violent acquaintance with the barrier. We are not discussing a genteel low-side tumble within a chicane, nor a polite excursion into a gravel trap. No, this was a projectile, a 160-kilogram mechanical beast with a human strapped atop it, moving at velocities that exceed the cognitive processing capacity of most bipedal creatures, colliding with a concrete wall with such ferocity that it effectively rewrites the grammatical structure of one's professional trajectory. Ducati's team commander, David Tarduzzi, subsequently confirmed that Marquez absorbed a fearsome impact to his right brachium and left manus during that 190 km/h wreck. He arose with deliberate slowness. He retraced his path to the garage on foot. He opted to return via a motorized scooter rather than submitting himself to the medical bay, because Marquez does not voluntarily present himself to healthcare facilities unless osseous structures are flagrantly protruding through integument. And now we arrive at the frostiest segment of this narrative, the detail that delineates authentic combatants from mere sightseers. The reigning world champion for the duration of the remaining COTA weekend concealed the true magnitude of his right-arm destruction beneath layers of dressing. Not a solitary soul in that paddock comprehended the severity of his condition. None were granted that privilege. Because Marquez's governing ethos, carved from sextuple world titles, forged in the crucible of the most catastrophic sequence of physical devastation in contemporary MotoGP chronicles, holds that your adversary does not earn the right to enumerate your lacerations. Previously it was shrouded and thus nobody possessed knowledge, he announced to the assembled press corps on Thursday at Jerez, his gaze devoid of animation, his lips curled into something approximating a smirk. I had no intention of lamenting it during the race weekend, no desire to bemoan it whatsoever. A human being catapults himself into a wall at 190 km/h. His right arm is reduced to shredded tissue. His cervical vertebrae and dorsal region bellow in protest. And his response, mark you, his response is to encase the damage, maintain absolute silence, and venture back onto the circuit to compete. A crash during the sprint race, naturally. He eliminated Fabio Di Giannantonio in that very sprint. A long lap penalty was served and absorbed. Nevertheless, he returned to secure fifth position in the Grand Prix. All the while the arm remained entombed beneath bandages, a clandestine truth he safeguarded with the same reticent ferocity a mobster reserves for an outstanding obligation. Patient, controlled, lethal, now the wrappings are discarded, the lesion stands exposed. And he strode into Jerez displaying it openly. This is not an exhibition of fragility. This is a manifesto shouted from the rooftops. But permit me now to steer our discourse toward the war chamber, toward the larger, more grotesque tableau that escapes the highlight-scrolling casual enthusiast. For this saga transcends a singular crash. This concerns a combatant engaging hostilities on multiple flanks simultaneously, defying gravity by refusing to collapse. Marquez continues to grapple with the lingering specters of his 2020 catastrophe at Jerez, the very circuit destined to host this weekend's Spanish Grand Prix. Those injuries were subsequently exacerbated by his tumble during last season's Indonesian Grand Prix. Allow that sentence to hover in the atmosphere. Allow it to seep into your thoracic cavity. The 2020 Jerez incident, that grotesque, bone-shattering moment when the entirety of the sport witnessed Marquez's arm snap on live television, that calamity has never genuinely mended. The neural pathways, the metallic implants, the fibrotic cicatrices, the proprioceptive memories, all of it persists in that right arm still. And then Mandalika last October. Marquez was obliged to forfeit the concluding rounds of his debut season with the Ducati Lenovo contingent owing to right shoulder injuries sustained following entanglement with Marco Bezzecchi in Indonesia. Always the right side, perpetually the right flank. The corpus keeps an unerring ledger. The reigning MotoGP sovereign continues to suffer from a shoulder affliction incurred at Mandalika last October. The motorcycle is in a critical state, but so am I, Marquez confessed to his engineering corps at COTA. I am in a struggle. There it is uttered aloud. I am in a struggle, not the sanitized press conference formulation, not the public relations polished. We need to address a few minor issues. The man peered directly into the pupils of his Ducati technicians amidst the Texan swelter and declared audibly that he is fractured and the machinery is fractured, and yet here they stand, shoulder to shoulder. That is not surrender. That is a battlefield commander conducting a damage assessment prior to launching the subsequent onslaught. During the initial laps when the tires retain their freshness, the motorcycle becomes excessively aggressive, and at this moment I cannot pilot it proficiently. It appears I have grown accustomed to assuming a posture, not a natural posture aboard the bike, and I am merely riding. Not organic, not instinctive. He is compensating, reconfiguring his entire riding methodology around a glenohumeral joint that no longer articulates according to its divine design. He is literally improvising a technique for motorcycle control atop physiological ruin, and he remains fifth in the global championship standings. Now let us direct our lens toward the adversary, for every satisfying revenge narrative requires a worthy antagonist. Aprilia. The year is 2026. They are currently engaged in what can only be characterized as armed plunder conducted in full daylight. Aprilia's riders, Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin, presently command the championship hierarchy, their RSGP machine having seized victory in 4 of the opening 6 rounds, encompassing all 3 Grand Prix events. 4 triumphs from 6 weekends, every single Grand Prix conquered. The Italian orange juggernaut is rampaging with impunity while Ducati, the team presumed to be unassailable, scrambles frantically for component upgrades, and Jiggy Dalligna combusts midnight petroleum, attempting to fathom why his erstwhile supersonic conveyance has been usurped by what was previously a footnote manufacturer. The GP26, at this juncture of the calendar, fails to ignite its tires with the same alacrity as the Aprilia can during those opening circuits. The RSGP possesses the capacity to rapidly establish a gap, while the Ducati requires a gestation period to achieve optimal thermal operating range. That interval, those preliminary laps wherein Marquez pilots a chilly, aggressive machine while nursing a compromised shoulder, atop a corporeal vessel subsisting on physiotherapy and unadulterated psychotic volition, that interval has cost him a podium position throughout the entire season. Not a deficiency of aptitude, not an absence of aspiration. No, simply physics and biology conspiring against the most prodigious talent of his generation, at the most inopportune conceivable moment. Marquez currently occupies 5th place, trailing Bezzecchi by 22 points in the World Championship standings, a deficit not ameliorated by a wheel rim disintegration during the Thai season opener. 22 points, a mere single race's distance. Do you wish to learn something about 22 points? Marc Marquez has surmounted deficits exceeding 22 points with one functional hand, a jeopardized shoulder, and sheer delirious determination. 22 points is not a chasm, it is a bullseye. And now Jerez, his domicile, his sanguine circuit, the very locale where he was nearly annihilated in 2020 and where he must now perform a theater of resurrection before a home audience that still bellows his name as though it were a supplication. Marquez acknowledged that he placed excessive faith in the track, in the machinery, in himself at COTA. That species of self-awareness, that uniquely brutal candor regarding his own overconfidence, constitutes a portion of what renders him so perilous. He does not manufacture alibis. He catalogs the crash as mere data, extracts the instructional value, and returns with amplified veracity. He states that he has maximized the extended interregnum to labor upon his recuperation in advance of Jerez. 3 weeks between COTA and Spain, 3 weeks of physiotherapeutic manipulation, of conditioning regimens, of gazing upon that wound on his arm each dawn and deciding its significance. Its significance is this: return with augmented ferocity. Ducati will additionally endeavor to conduct certain diagnostic tests during the race weekend in pursuit of solutions, meaning that Jerez represents not merely a contest for Marquez, but simultaneously a laboratory, a battlefield, and a proving ground. While Bezzecchi and Martin float ethereally atop the standings upon Italian wings, Ducati and Marquez will be engineering their resurgence in real time, lap by painstaking lap, sector by grueling sector. Last year at this very circuit, His younger sibling Alex crossed the finish line first in the Grand Prix while Marc committed an early error. The fraternal laceration adds its own stratum of private conflagration to everything unfolding here. The Marquez family dynamic, two brothers, disparate teams, identical blood, the same lunatic commitment to conquest, constitutes its own subplot smoldering beneath the championship narrative. The reigning world champion walks into Jerez fifth in the standings. No Grand Prix podium thus far in 2026, a visible lesion on his right forearm, a shoulder that remains less than optimal, a machine that actively resists him during those opening circuits, an enemy manufacturer currently rewriting the annals of the sport, and he is smiling. That smile is the single most terrifying phenomenon in MotoGP at this moment. Not because he is at ease, quite the contrary, but because he has occupied this territory before, shattered, hemorrhaging, trailing the pack, and the sport has witnessed repeatedly what transpires next.